Good afternoon, and thanks for having me here all the way from Australia. And as is tradition, Australia and New Zealand love competition. But as Tyrone said this morning, and I concur wholeheartedly, New Zealand is way ahead of Australia when it comes to the recognition of their Indigenous nations. And it's a little embarrassing to be here after last year being part of a country that turned their back significantly on a recognition of their Indigenous to Parliament. So it's fantastic to see how, and this is my first visit to this part of the world, it's just fantastic to see how well integrated the Maori tradition is in this part of the world compared to where I come from. I was very fortunate to lead a team of professionals to deliver what is now the first, and will remain the first, certified project under the Green Star buildings. And I'd like to just tell you a little bit about the project. The project is 80 Ann Street, and to give you a bit of an idea as to what it was, I'll go through the general design principles and explain a little bit about Mirvac, who are the property developers behind it, as well as the reasons why we chose to go with Green Star buildings. Most people in Auckland probably not familiar with Mirvac. We're a publicly listed property company of the likes of Lend Lease and some other people like Goodman and others who are represented in New Zealand. Mirvac don't operate here. However, we have a slightly different approach to development to some of our competitors. We actually have a completely integrated model whereby there's only one profit centre within our developments, and that is the development team are responsible for delivering the project. We have a builder who is effectively a cost-plus service delivery for us, who's part of the Mirvac team. And we also have a little different to other developers I've worked with throughout my career, in that we hold our product long-term. So we enjoy developing good quality products that we hang on to as an investment. And that was, that, I suppose, structure of the organisation is fairly fundamental in why we chose to go with the Green Star Buildings project. We have a host of partners listed up there who are long-term tenants of our property, and we have a large commercial office portfolio that houses, it's 90% premium grade, which is the best in town basically, and we operate across all of the eastern states. We have a couple of properties in Perth, but most of our assets are in Melbourne, Brisbane and Sydney. Mirvac have always had very aspirational ESG targets. Well before Green Star Buildings came along, Mirvac decided, and driven primarily by the CEO at the time, Susan Lloyd-Hurwitz, who was quoted earlier by Jorge, very keen to ensure that as a company we put ESG as a fundamental foundation for what we do. And as a result, we chose to deliver a development, and all of the developments that the commercial office developments that we've done, have always aimed to be best in class. And as a summary of the projects, and to give a little bit of context for how that project would fit in the Auckland market, it's about 75% larger than the PwC tower in town at the moment. So relatively large project by Australian standards, certainly globally not that big, but a significant commercial asset in the Australian property market. Again, for those of you who are not familiar with Brisbane, and that'll be most of you I'd imagine, Brisbane is, the city is dominated by the Brisbane River, and whilst water isn't quite as significant as it is in Auckland, it really dictates where people come and go within the city. And the 80 Ann Street is the red dot there, which was unusual for Brisbane in the fact that it wasn't part of the traditional, what was referred to as the Golden Triangle, where most commercial office space had been developed. However, there was no land there. When Mirvac decided they needed a quality asset in Brisbane, we looked around and said, well, our view is that the city will develop in that direction, and as the Olympics have now been allocated there for another 8 years' time. A lot of development is happening in that particular quarter of the city. In that particular image there, on top of the rail lines, if promises are delivered, will be the Olympic swimming venue and a large convention centre built in that particular location. So 80 Ann Street is in what we believe will be the growth corridor of Brisbane. The site itself has an interesting history, and that's why it's currently referred to as Heritage Lanes. The site was originally, back about 100 years ago, the site for the wholesale fruit and vegetable market for Brisbane, and part of the building that was, that when we purchased the site, there was the remnants of part of the facade and one end of that marketplace that we chose to maintain and refurbish, and that helped us in some regards to get the 6-star Green Star Buildings rating, because we could demonstrate that we'd actually integrated some existing property into the new development. When we started the project, we sat down as a group with all of our stakeholders and said, well, what are the fundamental pillars that we want this project to be? And we didn't want it to be a project that looked like it could have been plucked out of any other global city. We wanted it to be distinctly Queensland. We wanted it to be very authentic, open and porous, a community place, and these pillars underpinned most of the design decisions as we went through the project. I was involved in the project from prior to us securing Suncorp, who are the anchor tenant. So at the beginning of 2018, we started the design process and made application for our planning approvals, and as you'll see later, we finally got our 6-star certification about a year ago, and so a 5-year journey, which is not uncommon for a project of this size. The project sits between two streets, Ann Street and Turbot Street, and provides a through block link, and that's what the site looked like when we first purchased. Two very old buildings, one which we demolished on Ann Street, and the heritage listed facade on Turbot Street. The old market shed was inspiration for the architects, who are Woods Bagot, on this project to integrate the market sheds into the design of the new office tower, and hence the zigzag, I suppose, of what we refer to as the podium portion of the building, and that reflects the pitched roof of the old heritage building. And that's what it looks like at the moment. The project it's got a variety of precincts with different characters through a negotiated outcome with the planning approval, the planning authorities, Brisbane City Council. We elected to lift the main entry lobby up off ground level so that we could have a much greater ground plane for the public, and we've got a porte cochere drop-off area at ground level and a retail precinct at ground level, which is now very popular now that it's fully tenanted, and an elevated, very green. We wanted a lot of greenery in the building because, again, Brisbane is a subtropical city where, and again, it wouldn't fit into any other city around it. You certainly couldn't develop something with the amount of lush greenery that we did in Brisbane, and you couldn't put that into any other Australian city, certainly further south. We have a very public area, and part of the public space is used for a variety of activation projects. And again, this comes into part of our credits we received for some of the new Green Star Buildings points, things like activations. That's actually the welcoming party for KPMG, who are attended in the building, and they wanted their partners and their staff to be involved in a big party which we held basically in the porte cochere area, which we set up for with ability to put speakers and make it an event space in itself. The brick lane is where, and the where a lot of the retail is based. There's about 13 different retailers, variety of food and beverage. One of the most obvious things when you first walk onto the project is the public art. We had competitions for a variety of artists. We went with 2 local artists. One's an Indigenous, Megan Cope, who based her artwork on a stream that used to flow through the site prior to European development, and her artwork is based on the Aboriginal concept of water and a variety of different forms of water through the site, which is fantastic and comes to life at night, particularly when it's illuminated. Then the Heritage Marketplace at the rear of the project, which is reusing quite a bit of the previous historic market. We had to take trusses away from site, refurbish them and reinstate them so that we'd get a, an integrated heritage component to the building. The architects spent quite a bit of time on making sure that we integrated a lot of the look and feel of the heritage into the design. Very much an urban garden, and the lobby, most commercial, certainly premium commercial buildings, have very voluminous entry lobbies, and the challenge with having a relatively low ceiling in our entry lobby was how do we make it something unique and a premium feel about it. We opted to use the inspiration of the Queensland veranda as inspiration for a livable mixed mode environment where we have, through certain times of the year, we can, there's 3 different options for the conditioning of the lobby space. As you come up the main entrance, there is a very large digital screen, which was again part of our art delivery, and the use of that space is very much a breathable space. It can be opened up when the weather's appropriate to with louvers on the facade that give it a very veranda type feel. All of the windows are either sash windows or louvers that can be opened up and let the air flow through. It's fully controlled so that when the humidity gets too high we can close it down if it gets too hot or too windy, but the majority of the time it's actually open very much like a veranda and gives the breathable space inside, which is fabulous for the air quality. And Brisbane for most of the year is a very livable city with great climate. I'll skip through some of the rest of the architectural aspects of it, but as you can see there, a lot of greenery. The digital screen in the entry lobby, again an award-winning video artist helped us out with that, and every season we change it. The screen is linked to the Bureau of Meteorology's information, so the wind and the waves on the artwork respond to how the environment is on the day. So if the wind's coming from the south, the waves will come from the south, etc. Changes every quarter and is a spectacular thing that's worth seeing. Should you go to Brisbane, pop in and have a look at it. We recycled quite a bit of timber in the lobby. The reception desk was all made from timber recycled from the heritage buildings, and is a very vibrant place. Certainly in the morning there's coffee available up there, and it's the place to be. The efficiency of the tower was something that, again, we wanted to focus on as a commercial developer. We need to maximise our income. Not unusual for a large floor plate building to have a side core with quite a bit of natural light and space that's very column free, etc. We had original aspirations were 6-star Green Star under the previous tool, a well platinum rating, 5.5-star neighbours for energy and 4.5 for water. All of those ratings have now been certified, and as I'll elaborate a little further, we changed horses midstream to go from the previous rating system to the Green Star buildings for a variety of reasons. The project's got a number of interesting aspects other than just the green credentials. It's also got a full integrated building platform, which is basically a communications backbone that all of the services in the building can be monitored off one system effectively. A number of the tenants, Suncorp and KPMG, have built their own technology around the base building's skeleton, I guess, and they've found it particularly beneficial for doing all sorts of things like meeting room bookings and occupancy usage and managing their own fit-out, energy consumptions, etc. The building's broken into three forms. I'll jump through this, but basically, in addition to the digital screen in the entry lobby, we've got we also did an integrated fit-out for the about 70% of the building. We did integrated fit-outs, so we constructed the fit-out for Suncorp, and that was an award-winning fit-out designed by Hassel, and again, some interesting aspects of that, for example, a staircase that goes and links all of the Suncorp floors together. They also have a breathable floor for their main staff amenity level, where they have a canteen and an internal bank branch if you happen to work at Suncorp and bank there as well. The crown of the building has another digital screen on it. At the time when it was commissioned, it was the largest digital screen in the Southern Hemisphere, some 15-20% bigger than the MCG scoreboard. Given that digital screens are coming up everywhere these days, I'm not sure it still applies, but it's a very large screen. Again, has four different artworks there, and at various times you can, for example, you can show the Olympics there if you choose to, and it's space that's right next to Suncorp boardroom, so fabulous space. Unfortunately, for the rest of the occupants, it's only available for Suncorp to occupy, but a very usable and desirable place. The other aspects of the project were that we really wanted to contribute to the city. We believe we've done that, and I'll just now go to a short video which will give you a bit of a walk around, I trust. Emma. A little bit of a timeline for how we went about achieving our rating. As Jorge and others have mentioned, the GBCA started a pilot project with the industry back in about 2019, and Mirvac decided to be involved in that along with other industry players. and working with the GBCA over that period of time gave us a much better idea as to what the tool was all about. As Jorge mentioned, there were things like taking gas out of projects. This project started to comply with the Property Council guidelines of a premium building. We had to have gas in the building. However, when we chose to take gas out, we went to all of the tenants and said, we want to remove gas. Are you happy for us to do that and have your kitchens operate fully electrically? They all agreed. So whilst there's a gas connection, there's actually no gas being used in this building. And that was just one of the decisions that was made to swap from the old tool to the new tool. The building was practically complete in April of 22, and we registered it we chose only a few months prior to prac completion to actually go with the new tool rather than the old one. And we ended up and got certification in July of last year. We achieved 75 points out of we needed 70. We always needed a contingency up our sleeve because we were never completely sure as to exactly how many points we would achieve. And without going into the great detail of exactly what points we got, there wasn't one silver bullet that got us there. We didn't have a trigen plant or anything like that on the project. It was really a combination of a host of smaller initiatives. The next couple of slides are just basically focusing on the new ones, the positive credits. For example, to achieve the 18 points we got for that, we had a significant amount of reuse of existing heritage components. We used low carbon concrete. Getting people on board to help out with EPDs and the like was a task that we didn't really fully appreciate when we started it. However, because it was the company is an integrated company, we didn't have the battles between silos of saying, well, I didn't allow for that, I'm not going to spend the money on that. It really was a complete team effort across our procurement and management team, etc. Yes, we're prepared to commit to various sustainable cleaning practices, etc., all of which are now picked up under the Green Star Buildings tool. Places credits, we had a lot of involvement with the Indigenous community. We also increased things like EV charges within the building. We had a variety of initiatives as part of our Reconciliation Action Plan that were driven by this particular project. And people credits were achieved by doing things like initiatives for activation plans. We had walking tours with the Aboriginal community. We had dedicated spaces for a whole host of things that wouldn't get incorporated in most commercial office buildings that helped us achieve some of those credits. Nature, some interesting initiatives that I could talk about for a lot longer than the time I've got available, but just one thing we did which was really well received. We engaged a specialist to come along after we'd finished and said, well, look, we've achieved the minimum DDA requirements. What else can we do that are above minimum requirements? She came through and looked at it and said, well, what about seeing eye dogs? There's nowhere for a seeing eye dog to be, for the owner to take the dog to relieve themselves. You can put some grass down your open space, which we did. And as it happened, Suncorp had a blind or vision impaired employee who had a dog. And when we told him, he was very emotional because up until that point he had to take his dog, he'd have to walk his dog almost a kilometre to get some parkland because we're in the middle of city. So little things like that which cost very little money, but just took a little bit of extra care and attention to achieve those sort of initiatives which have been really well received. Why Green Star Buildings? Well, in simple terms, I think one of the Stark slides nailed it. We decided prior to any of the investigations that people like JLL have done now, that a building long term would be a much better investment for us to hold. It would be more attractive to investors, tenants and everybody. So we decided that no, we would go with a new Green Star Buildings tool, and given that I've got very limited time, I'll go through the rest of it. We worked very much to revise our pathway. worked very closely with the GBCA, and I'm sure in this part of the world the NZGBC would be very helpful, the same as their colleagues in Australia. We had challenges, there was no doubt about it. Being the first project on the calendar, there was a lot of things that we learned, as did the GBCA, about, well, what does this target actually require? Digging into the actual definition of some of the various point scores was a challenge. However, we'd do it all again, and if we, one of the big lessons we learned, I suppose, was don't underestimate the amount of time that it takes to get the 6-star rating. It was a significant investment in resources, more so than money. It didn't cost a lot of money in capital expenditure, but resource expenditure was very significant. And the end result, we got our rating system, which was a fabulous thing to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Cris, so much for your presentation. We acknowledge your team's incredible work, your generosity in sharing us your insights today. I'm still just inspired by the building and that video and that walkthrough. The theme I keep hearing at Tefano is that sustainability is actually the best investment for our future success, but also how beautiful your building came together. Like, if you allow me to geek out for a moment, like I used to be an architect. Didn't make it very far, but I used to be. I love the creativity in the architecture, your references to history and culture, incredible. I also love how the lobby is elevated so that you have all that public space, and how digital art and biophilia is integrated in such an elegant way. And I also love the use of recycled materials done really elegantly too. I mean, sustainability is great, but you've got to have a great product and a great space for it to gain traction. You've done really well. So, Cris, in your talk, I picked up that there were some initial reluctancies to invest, from your stakeholders, right? To invest in some of the sustainable elements for the build. For the other developers, in the room today, what was your biggest barrier that may have prohibited the sustainable outcomes, and how did you resolve it in the end?
I suppose the biggest challenge was an unknown target. We were confident, and Mirvac have developed a variety of probably 5 or 6 projects in the last 10 years, and each one has had the challenge of bettering the previous one. Yeah. We always wanted to do better than the previous one. When the new rating tool came out, we said, well, that'd be a great target to go for. The biggest challenge was, were we confident of getting there? Working with the pilot group helped us understand the target, but we had to make a decision fairly, late in the pieces, because you can't collect the amount of data you require to address one particular rating system, because it's just completely you can't translate it easily to the other. So about 6 or 9 months prior, we just had to back ourselves, and the team said, look, I think we can get there. I put my hand up and said to the CEO, are you happy for me to have a go at it? And she said, well, if you think you'll get there. That was probably the biggest risk we took, was, can we actually achieve a target that hasn't ever been achieved before? Wow, incredible. But we did, which was a relief, but also a challenge.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.